Introduction. A rare question. You hold, in mind if not in hand, a small curiosity, a question that changes everything. Perhaps it arrived disguised as a polite inquiry at a tea table. Perhaps it struck like a sudden bolt in a dimly lit negotiation room. Questions are slippery things, light as a whisper, sharp as a blade, and yet most of us use it without care, as if they were merely tools to extract simple facts. This book asks you to stop. It invites you to see questions as instruments of influence, keys that open rooms we had no idea existed. Imagine an old library, the kind with staircases that groan and dust motes that float like suspended time. On a forgotten shelf there rests a ledger, its leather dulled, its ink brown by years. Its pages hold recipes for conversations that do not merely inform but transform. This book is fashioned in that spirit. Not a manual of tricks, but a collection of refined, time-tested questions. Question traps, designed to redirect outcomes, elicit truths, and create openings where none seem to exist. Rarity is not only antique in appearance, it is rare in use. To ask a question that shapes destiny is uncommon because it requires intention, craft, and moral clarity. Why traps? The word startles, and rightly so. A trap implies cunning, a set piece that changes the trajectory of motion. Yet the traps I teach are gentle, ethical, and elegant. They are not snares of deceit, but frameworks that nudge, illuminate, and invite. A well-placed question is like a lantern in fog. It reveals contours and reveals choices. The trap is simply precise framing that guides a respondent into a more useful path. For both of you, this book is for those who sense that their words are failing them, for the negotiator tired of no, for the manager who cannot coax more from a hesitant team, for the lover who longs for deeper honesty, for the teacher who wishes curiosity to bloom, for the leader who wishes to steer not by command but by conversation. It is also for the reader who delights in the artful, the slight, the rare. The language you will encounter here leans toward the classical. Measured sentences, deliberate examples, and the cadence of someone reading aloud in a drawing room long ago. But beneath that skin you will find practical instruments, simple, repeatable, and surprisingly modern in effect. What you will not find are empty promises. There is no single question that wins every argument or forces every door. Rather, each chapter will present a category of question traps. What they do, how they fail when misused, and how to apply them correctly. You will meet questions that dislodge fixed positions by redirecting attention from stance to story. Create commitment by inviting small, sincere admissions. Expose real motives without accusation. Build trust by shifting power to the listener. Close deals by making the next step obvious and trivial. You will also encounter the ethics of these techniques. Power exercise without conscience becomes coercion. The rare question, wielded by selfish hands, becomes a weapon. This book insists upon stewardship. Use these traps to align preferences, solve problems, and free otherwise trapped conversations, not to manipulate for gain at another's expense. Each chapter is short but dense. A vignette to illustrate, a breakdown of the mechanism, a common misstep, and a clear practice you can begin immediately. Think of it as a pocket compendium of conversation tools, antique in voice, modern in result. Here is a promise, and a promise must be plain. By the final page, you will have discovered one question, deceptively simple and carefully hidden in the weave of book, that synthesizes the central lesson of every chapter. It is the book's secret, the rarest instrument in the ledger. I do not reveal it now because revelation is a ritual. You will see the pieces fall into place across stories and exercises. By then the question will arrive like the last note of melody, inevitable, clarifying, quietly powerful. How should you read this book? Slow is often better. Read a chapter aloud if you can. Try the practice at the end of each chapter tomorrow in a small, low-stakes conversation. Notice not just the outcome, but the change in tone, the softness in a room, the shift from defense to curiosity. Keep a small notebook. Note the questions that worked, the ones that failed, and the reasons you think they did. The ledger from the imagined shelf will be proud to bear your annotations. A final word before we open the first chapter. Rarity grants responsibility. When a question can change the course of conversation, it can also change people. As you learn these traps, let them make you more humane, more attentive to another's dignity, and more willing to hear the answer you neither expected nor wanted to hear. For mastery without compassion is a dark thing. Wisdom insists that we use influence to enlarge possibility rather than to narrow it. Turn the page. The first practical trap waits. A small technique that dissolves defensive no into a path toward mutual discovery. It appears ordinary at first glance, as many great things do, but used rightly, you will begin to retune the way people answer you. Read it slowly. Practice it gently. Let the ledger's dust settle. Let the lantern be lit. Chapter 1, The Gentle No. Mr. Ashby, you came in on a rain-slick afternoon and said plainly, "No." Clara, I did. I have said it often. It feels final. Safe. Clean. Mr. Ashby. And yet every no I have met has been porous. It admits light. It hides a shape. Tell me, what did you mean by it just now? Clara, that I cannot or will not do what you asked. Mr. Ashby, that is the face of the thing, but there are many faces beneath it. A no can mean not now, not like that, I don't trust you, or I cannot afford it. If we treat the word as a wall, we lose the map that lies behind it. If, instead, we treat it like a curtain, a careful question will let us see the room. Clara, you mean ask why? Mr. Ashby, why is blunt. It often makes people tighten. There is a finer instrument, a question that invites description rather than defense. Try this. Help me understand what makes this a no for you. Clara, that feels softer, less accusatory. Mr. Ashby, precisely. It asks for the story. Once someone tells a story, choices appear where none seem to exist. The trap, gently sprung, is not to catch and punish, but to reveal the conditions that produce a refusal. A short vignette. A manager, Helena, offered extra budget for a project. Her colleague, Jonah, answered, no, Helena's instinct was to press. But why not? Jonah folded his arms. Helena switched instead to, help me understand what makes this a no for you. Jonah's shoulders eased. He named the real cause, a preceding failed rollout that left the team overextended. Helena did not argue. She asked, if we could remove that constraint, what would you propose? Jonah sketched a smaller pilot, acceptable, low risk, and likely to succeed. The no had not vanished. It had turned into a negotiation about constraints. Mechanism, why this question works. It replaces accusation with curiosity. Why reads like challenge. Help me understand reads like invitation. It externalizes a problem. The respondent explains conditions rather than defending identity. It exposes constraints and assumptions. Once described, constraint can be reframed, shifted, or removed. It preserves dignity. A person is allowed to be cautious without being shamed, which increases a chance of collaboration. Common missteps and how they spoil the trap. Turning curiosity into interrogation. If you follow the opening question with rapid-fire counter-questions, curiosity becomes pressure. Pause. Listen. Feigning curiosity. If your tone says, I will use your answer against you, the question detonates. Sincerity is invisible until it is missing, offering immediate fixes. When the respondent is still speaking, launching into solutions signals you are only waiting to be right. Reflect first, propose later. Ignoring power dynamics. If you are in a position of authority, your request for help me understand may feel coercive unless paired with real restraint. Make space in your behavior as well as your words. Correct application, a tiny ritual. Pause. Let the no land. Resist the impulse to fill the silence. Ask, help me understand what makes this a no for you. Say it slowly. Listen actively. Repeat a short summary of what you heard. So you're worried about X and you feel Y because of Z. Did I get that right? Name constraints. Ask, if that constraint were different, how might you respond? Invite a small step. Don't ask for a full reversal. Invite a tiny experiment or clarification, a practice to try tomorrow. Find a low-stakes no, a refuse invitation, a decline offer, a curt refusal in email. Use the ritual above. In person, say the question aloud. By message, write the same words. Record what the other person names. Do not argue. If they give reasons, reflect them back. Notice how often a specific obstacle appears. Timing, trust, money, fear. Attempt a single tiny redress. A shorter meeting, a clearer deadline, a test run. Ethics and margin. We do not use this question to pry painful secrets for private gain. The aim is to remove friction that prevents honest exchange, not to manufacture consent. When the revealed reason is personal, respond with care, not commerce. When the reason is structural, offer structural remedies. Hook, why continue? A no. We'll meet a different fate by the time we finish this book. In later chapters, you will learn how to combine this gentle inquiry with a commitment-shaping question that turns tentative acceptance into durable yes. The ledger holds that single, concealed question, the one that tends to arrive only after several honest doors have been opened. Practice this first trap. It prepares the ground for that final, rare instrument. Clara, I will try it. I like that it asks for a story, not a defense. Mr. Ashby, good. Begin with a small no. Tend to it. In the next chapter, we will meet a question that softens guarded truths into surprising admissions. Chapter 2. The Mirror Question. Mr. Ashby, yesterday you learned to part the curtain of a no. Today I will show you a way to quiet the guard that stands behind the curtain. Clara, the guard is loud. It shouts duty, embarrassment, pride. How do we get to lower its sword? Mr. Ashby, by asking someone to step outside themselves for a moment, not to flee the room, but to change perspective. Try this. If you were advising a friend in your situation, what would you tell them? Clara, that seems clever. People are kinder when they speak about others. Mr. Ashby, they are. The phrasing turns a first-person threat into third-person counsel. Admitting difficulty to yourself feels like confession. Giving advice to a friend feels like wisdom. The mirror softens edges. Dialogue demonstration. Mr. Ashby, you told me you don't want to take the role. Now answer plainly. If you were advising a friend in your situation, what would you tell them? Clara, I suppose I'd say, don't take it if it will swallow your time. Mr. Ashby, and you are saying that to your friend easily. What happens when you turn the sentence back to yourself? Clara, it becomes heavier. I call it selfish or cowardly. Mr. Ashby, exactly. But notice what you just named. The real cost is time. That matters. You've just admitted the kernel without naming shame. A short vignette. At a startup, May kept postponing a product launch. Her colleagues called her cautious. Investors called her slow. In a review, her mentor asked, if you were advising a friend in your shoes, what would you tell them? May described a cautious, stage rollout. She would recommend to preserve reputation and learn quickly. Once the plan left the realm of May's identity, I cannot risk this, and enter the realm of counsel. I would suggest this. The team found a compromise, a limited release with clear measures. The guarded truth became an actionable plan. Mechanism: why the mirror question works. Reduces self-threat. Speaking as a third party lowers shame and deflection. Encourages clarity. Advising a friend forces one to state the underlying reason succinctly. Reveals values without accusation. You learn what matters to someone: time, reputation, fairness. Because advice tends to align with values. Creates psychological distance. That distance allows creativity. People imagine alternatives they wouldn't risk claiming for themselves. Common missteps and how they spoil the trap. Turning the mirror into a test. If you push. So why won't you do for yourself what you tell a friend? The person feels shamed. Pause instead of accusing. Demanding an immediate moral pivot. People may counsel bravery for a friend while recognizing personal constraints. Let both coexist. Don't force consistency, using it as a manipulative trick. If your tone signals you intend to use the admission against them, the question repels. Keep it genuinely curious. Skipping the return. After they advise the friend, don't leave them in third person. Help them translate that counsel back into their own terms gently. Correct application. The 3-line ritual. Ask. If you were advising a friend in your situation, what would you tell them? Speak softly, allow a beat, listen and reflect. Summarize their counsel. So your suggestion would be X, is that right? Translate together. Ask, which part of that advice could work for you right now? Even in a small way? Invite one tiny step, a practice to try tomorrow. Think of a guarded truth you suspect in someone close, a hesitant colleague, a wary friend. Ask the mirror question. When they advise a friend, write down the core elements of that advice: risk, timing, reassurance. Offer to help one tiny piece of it. A short trial, an email draft, an introduction. Notice whether the third person counsel returns as willingness when accompanied by practical support. Ethics and care. This technique opens delicate places. Use it to uncover barriers and build options, not to press confession for leverage. When advice reveals personal fear or trauma, respond with sympathy and, if needed, offer to stop. The mirror reveals. You must hold what it shows responsibly. Hook, why continue? You have now learned to unwrap a no and to quiet the guard that hides a true reason. In the next chapter, you will discover a question that turns vague hesitations into commitments, not by forcing answers, but by making the next small step feel inevitable. The ledger's rare question draws closer. It likes partners who can listen without seizing. Chapter 3. One small step. Mr. Ashby. People fear the cliff more than the path. They will not leap, but sometimes they will take the first stone. Clara. So we ask for a stone instead of a leap? Mr. Ashby. Precisely. Ask for the smallest possible movement. Not a trap, but to test and to build momentum. Try this. What's one small step you'd be willing to try this week? Clara. That feels humble. It doesn't demand everything. Mr. Ashby. Humility invites motion. A tiny yes is often a hinge that opens future agreement. It's rarely the final outcome. It's the beginning of a direction. Dialogue demonstration. Mr. Ashby. You said you're not ready to change vendors. What if I asked, what's one small step you'd be willing to try this week? Clara. Maybe a short demo with just one team member. Mr. Ashby. Good. Not a contract, just a demo. If the demo goes well, what might follow? Clara. Possibly a pilot. But let's see the demo first. Mr. Ashby. That's all I ask. One small step. Notice how the question converts an absolute into a testable experiment. A short vignette. A therapist recommended a daily 5-minute journaling practice to a client overwhelmed by change. The client bristled at habits and commitment. The therapist reframed. What's one small step you'd be willing to try this week? The client agreed to 2 minutes after dinner. 2 minutes turned into 5, 5 into 10, and within a month the practice became a dependable ally. The large resistance dissolved once the first tiny step was accepted. Mechanism. Why this question works. It lowers psychological cost. Small steps reduce perceived loss and risk. It leverages consistency bias. People who agree to one small step are likelier to take a related second step. It creates a clear, observable experiment. A defined small action is easy to evaluate and modify. It shifts the conversation from abstract yes/no to concrete action. Action breeds information. Information breeds decisions. Common missteps and how they spoil the trap. Asking too soon for too much. If you push a large ask after the small one before it's complete, you break trust. Let momentum build naturally, making the small step vague. Try it is weak. Define time, scope, and measurement. Who, when, what, how you'll judge it, using it to entrap. Don't treat the small step as a loophole to escalate pressure. The small step must remain voluntary and reversible. Failing to follow up. If someone takes a small step and you don't acknowledge it, the moment is wasted. Celebrate the motion. Learn from it. Correct application. The 4-line ritual. Ask, what's one small step you'd be willing to try this week? Allow silence. Clarify. Define the step concretely so that the 20-minute demo on Tuesday with Emma, schedule or measure. Put on a calendar or set a simple success measure. Acknowledge. After the step, reflect on what changed and ask whether the next small step makes sense. A practice to try tomorrow. Identify one conversation where a full commitment feels unrealistic, a purchase, a behavior change, a meeting. Ask the small step question. If the other person proposes something, pin down a time or metric. After the step, send a short note of thanks and one observation. You are building both data and relationship, ethics and boundary. The one small step question is powerful precisely because it nudges people. Use it to reduce friction and create options, not to exploit incremental compliance for ends that harm the other person. Always keep reversibility. A small step should be safe to stop without penalty. When the step reveals genuine harm or distress, pause and shift from momentum to care. Hook, why continue? You have begun to transform refusal into conversation and hesitation into motion. The next chapter will teach you how to reveal what someone means when they say because the soft, hidden motives beneath polite answers, without making them defensive. There are questions that coax buried reasons into daylight. They are subtle, and they change negotiations into understanding. Chapter 4. The heart of because. Mr. Ashby, people dress reasons in a polite coat and call it because. It's a shorthand that often hides the part that matters most. Clara. So the job is to ask for the coat to be removed? Mr. Ashby, not to rip it off. To invite them to point to the single thread that holds it together. Try this. When you say because, what do you most want to understand? Clara, that seems direct but not accusing. Mr. Ashby, exactly. It shifts the request from justification to priority. Because usually bundles fear, value, logistics, and history. This question asks, which of those is the one to notice first? Dialogue demonstration. Mr. Ashby, you refuse the invitation, saying because I'm busy. Tell me plainly. When you say because, what do you most want to understand? Clara, I guess that I'm protecting my free evenings. They're rare. Mr. Ashby, there it is. Not an attack on me, but a boundary. Now we can work with an actual constraint instead of guessing motives. A short vignette. A fundraiser heard. We can't support that project because of timing, the organizer asked. When you say, because, what do you most want to understand? The donor answered that my board meets quarterly and won't approve anything until then. The organizer could have pushed persuasion. Instead, they scheduled a briefing for the board and offered a stage pledge for the next cycle. The vague timing had been a container for a specific process. Mechanism, why this question works. It narrows ambiguity. Because there's a bundle. The question asks which item in the bundle matters now. It replaces assumption with specificity. You move from imagining motives to naming them. It reduces defensiveness. People rarely feel accused when asked what they want to be heard. It opens targeted remedies. Once you know the core concern, time, trust, money, fear, you can offer precise options, common missteps, and how they spoil the trap. Paraphrasing too soon. If you read tell there because as a critique, they may retract. Reflect simply. So your main concern is X, is that right? Turning it into a cross-examination. Don't follow the question with a volley of YS. One gentle follow-up is enough. Assuming bad faith. If you hear because as excuse rather than reason, you will sound contemptuous. Start with generosity. Forgetting to act on the answer. Asking without remedying or at least acknowledging. Feels performative. Correct application. The 5-line ritual. Pause and name the word. When you hear because, let the sentence finish. Ask. When you say because, what do you most want to understand? Listen fully. Give space to the whole answer. There may be more than one thread. Reflect briefly. So it sounds like X is a key thing. Did I get that right? Offer one focused response. Propose a small, relevant adjustment or ask, if that were different, what would you consider? A practice to try tomorrow. At your next meeting or in your next message that meets a polite refusal, notice the word because. Ask the question verbatim. Write down the single thing they identify. See whether that single thing can be addressed by a scheduling tweak, a clarified term, a small trial, or simply recognition. Try to close at least one loop that evening, even if it's a short note saying, thanks, I hear that X matters. Ethics and tenderness. Asking someone to name what they most want you to understand can reveal vulnerability. Treat the answer as a trust. If the revealed element is personal health, family, trauma, respond with care and, if appropriate, offer to stop the line of questioning. Use this technique to reduce friction and create clarity, never to expose weakness for advantage. Hook, why continue? You are learning to move from walls to windows. The gentle no, the mirror of counsel, the small step hinge, and now the unclothed because. The next chapter will teach you how to invite confession without shame, a question that encourages honest, motive-revealing admissions while preserving dignity. The ledger keeps its rare instrument safe. Only readers who have learned these softer tools may use it well. Chapter 5. The Quiet Confession. Mr. Ashby. People rarely hand over their truth in full. They give fragments, half-truths, or polite fictions. Our task is to invite a true fragment, something small, safe, and honest. Clara, you mean coax them into admitting what they already know? Mr. Ashby, yes, but gently. The trick is to make confession feel less like exposure and more like relief. Try this. Would it be honest to say, followed by a modest, plausible hypothesis. Clara, that sounds risky. You're putting words in their mouth. Mr. Ashby, you are offering a mirror with a label. It lets them correct, accept, or adjust a suggestion without performing a moral undoing. It's easier to say yes to a soft, proposed truth than to volunteer the same fact under direct pressure. Dialogue demonstration. Mr. Ashby, the report missed a deadline, and you seemed uneasy. Would it be honest to say the team was stretched too thin? Clara: yes, that's true. We were juggling 3 launches. Mr. Ashby: thank you. Saying that aloud helps me see what to change and gives you room to breathe without naming blame. A short vignette. During a family meeting, Marcus suspected his son Liam was avoiding college applications but feared embarrassing him. Marcus offered: would be honest to say you're unsure whether college is the right step right now? Liam exhaled and admitted he felt pressured and afraid of choosing the wrong path. The soft hypothesis let Liam own a difficult truth without the sting of being accused of laziness. Together they mapped options: gap year, part-time classes, career counseling. Mechanism: why this question works. It reduces threat by offering, not demanding. People can accept, clarify, or deny a gentle guess more easily than answering blunt probes. It provides permission to speak. Phrased as a tentative observation, the question signals openness rather than accusation. It narrows the field of possible truths. A specific hypothesis gives the respondent a manageable place to start. It preserves agency. The respondent controls whether to confirm, modify, or refuse a label. The power to name remains theirs. Common missteps and how they spoil the trap. Guessing wildly. A speculative hypothesis that misses the mark feels intrusive. Keep it plausible and informed. Using it as a rhetorical trap. If the suggested truth is framed as shame, the person will recoil. Keep your tone neutral and kind. Stacking hypotheses. Offering multiple labeled guesses in quick succession overwhelms. Offer one modest proposal at a time, not letting them retract. If they deny your suggestion, accept it without pressing. Don't convert a refusal into proof of guilt. Correct application. The 4-line ritual. Observe a signal. Notice tension, avoidance, or a pattern. Offer a modest hypothesis. Would it be honest to say X? Keep X short and specific. Pause and listen. Allow acceptance, correction, or silence. Respond with care. If confirmed, ask a small next step. If denied, thank them and move on. A practice to try tomorrow. In a conversation where you sense withheld truth, a colleague evading a topic, a friend being guarded, offer one modest hypothesis using the exact phrasing. Would it be honest to say? Keep the hypothesis minimal. Note whether the person confirms, corrects, or stays quiet. If confirmed, ask, what would help make that easier? If corrected, reflect their correction and thank them. Ethics and tenderness. This question touches tender places. Use it to ease burdens, not to expose secrets for advantage. Never weaponize a confirmed confession. If the revealed truth involves harm, abuse, self-harm, illegal activity, shift from inquiry to appropriate care. Listen, ensure safety, and seek professional help when necessary. The quiet confession must swim in compassion. Hook, why continue? You now have tools to turn no into story, soften guards, start motion, unpack because, and invite honest fragments. The next chapter will teach you to shape commitment by asking a question that converts intention into ownership. A question that makes people speak, not only their reasons, but their promised next step. The ledger's final instrument waits. It prefers hands that first learn gentleness. Chapter 6. The Ownership Question. Mr. Ashby, we have softened refusals, unmasked reasons, and invited tiny moves. Now we ask for something that turns intention into ownership. Clara, ownership sounds heavy. People recoil when asked to own things. Mr. Ashby, only when it is demanded. Ownership asked for with care becomes an offered agency. Try this. Which part of this would you be willing to take responsibility for, and what would that look like? Clara, that's direct. It asks them to choose their role. Mr. Ashby, yes, and choice breeds buy-in. When someone names a piece they will carry, they bind themselves to a visible action, not an abstract promise. Dialogue demonstration. Mr. Ashby, we have options, a pilot, a feedback group, or a timeline change. Which part of this would you be willing to take responsibility for, and what would that look like? Clara, I could run the pilot design and set 2 milestones, a demo in 3 weeks and a review after 6. Mr. Ashby, that's concrete. How much time do you need each week? Clara, 2 hours. I can protect that time. Mr. Ashby, excellent. I'll adjust expectations and let the team know you're leading the pilot. Thank you for owning that piece. A short vignette. In a community garden project, many voiced support, but no one stepped forward to coordinate supplies. The organizer asked at the meeting, which part would you be willing to take responsibility for, and what would that look like? A neighbor named sourcing soil and scheduling pickups, and specified 2 hours on Saturday for coordination. Once responsibilities were named, the project moved from pleasant talk to scheduled work, and it kept moving because named ownership invited accountability and small public commitments. Mechanism, why this question works. It empowers choice. People prefer to pick a role rather than be assigned one. Selection implies consent. It converts vague goodwill into observable commitments. Naming a task plus format /time creates a measurable promise. It leverages social accountability. A publicly named responsibility increases follow-through. It reduces diffusion of responsibility. When tasks are unassigned, well-meaning groups often stall. Clarity remedies that. Common missteps and how they spoil the trap. Forcing ownership. Demanding someone own this without options produces resistance. Offer choices and let them pick. Accepting vague answers. I'll help is not ownership. Push gently for specifics. Who, what, when, how. Turning ownership into burden. If the named role is problematic, negotiate scope and support. Ownership must be sustainable. Public shaming by omission. Don't single out the person who fails later. Use a named responsibility as a chance for support, not blame. Correct application. The 4-step ritual. Frame the need briefly. Describe options and constraints. Ask, which part of this would you be willing to take responsibility for, and what would that look like? Pause. Pin it down. Confirm the specifics, tasks, time, deadline, and any resources needed. Record and offer support. Note the commitment publicly, a message, calendar invite, and ask how you can help them keep it. A practice to try tomorrow. In a meeting, during a planning moment, use the phrasing above. If you're speaking one-on-one, adapt. Which part of this would you be willing to own after they answer? Immediately set a small, visible marker, a calendar event, a checklist item, or a simple public note, so the commitment exists outside memory. Follow up kindly on the agreed milestone. Ethics and generosity. Asking for ownership is not a way to offload unpleasant work on others. Offer to share burden, to provide resources, or to rotate tasks. Be especially cautious when power differences exist. If you're an authority, make sure taking responsibility is truly optional and compensated with recognition and support. True ownership respects the person who accepts it. Hook, why continue? You now know how to turn words into actions. Invite responsibility. Make it specific, support it. The next chapter will teach you how to frame questions that expose hidden trade-offs. Those quiet calculations people make when they can't say yes outright. Learn that skill well, and conversations will stop stalling in polite fog and begin resolving with clear, mutual decisions. Chapter 7. The Trade-Off Question. Mr. Ashby, people rarely refuse because of a single reason. They balance invisible costs and benefits like merchants weighing coins. Clara, those hidden scales decide many no-s and hesitations. How do we make the ledger visible? Mr. Ashby, by asking the question that names the exchange. If you could keep a, what would you be willing to give up or ask for in return? Clara, that sounds like bargaining. Mr. Ashby, it is bargaining but honest. Most stalled conversations are quiet deals left unspoken. This question invites the other party to show their internal trade map, so you can negotiate against what really matters. Dialogue demonstration. Mr. Ashby, you hesitate to approve the extra funding. Tell me plainly, if you could keep your control over budget timing, what would you be willing to give up or ask for in return? Clara, I want clearer milestones and a rollback clause. Mr. Ashby, good. So you keep timing control. We give you measurable checkpoints and an exit. Can we sketch what those milestones look like now? Clara, yes, a biweekly review and a 30-day rollback if KPIs aren't met. That could work. A short vignette. At a school board meeting, teachers wanted a longer semester for in-depth projects. Administrators feared scheduling conflicts. A chair asked, if you could keep the current calendar, what would you be willing to give up or need to allow longer projects? Teachers asked for compressed exam weeks and a shared block for projects. Administrators asked for a monitoring plan and parent communications. Naming the trade-offs turned a stalemate into a co-designed schedule that both sides could live with. Mechanism, why this question works. It makes implicit trade-offs explicit. People often know what they value, but not how to state the swap. It shifts conversation from refusal to conditional possibility. No becomes yes if a fertile form. It reveals priorities. What someone is willing to trade exposes their true constraints and values. It invites reciprocity. Once trade is visible, you can propose proportional offers or ask what would make the deal fair. Common missteps and how they spoil the trap. Framing it as accusation. If the question sounds like, what will you give up to get your way? It provokes defensiveness. Use neutral phrasing, accepting vague trade-offs. Something fair is unworkable. Insist on concrete terms. Over-offering immediately. If you concede too quickly, you lose negotiating ground and the other party's chance to show priorities. Using it to corner. Don't weaponize the revealed trade-off. Instead, use it to craft a humane compromise. Correct application, the 5-line ritual. State the impasse succinctly. Name the conflict without blame. Ask, if you could keep X, what would you be willing to give up or ask for in return? Offer either / or to open both giving and requesting. Encourage specificity. Push for measurable items, timelines, or conditions. Propose a proportional response. Match their trade with fair concession or alternative. Document and test. Agree on a short trial or review to see if the trade works. A practice to try tomorrow. When you meet resistance in planning, pricing, or priorities, use the trade-off question. Listen for the single most important thing they wish to preserve. Ask them to state one concrete concession or condition that would make the project acceptable. Offer proportional counter, a timeline, metric, or support, and suggest a limited trial so both parties can learn. Ethics and fairness. Trade making must protect dignity. Never pressure someone to sacrifice essential needs or boundaries. Be wary when power imbalances exist. Those with less power may feel coerced to offer disproportionate concessions. In such cases, propose creative supports, resourcing recognition time, rather than taking value from the weaker side. The true aim is mutual benefit, not extraction. Hook, why continue? You now hold a question that turns stalemate into negotiation. The ledger of hidden costs is open. The next chapter will teach you how to surface unstated assumptions, those quiet beliefs that shape every answer, so you may reframe them and widen possibility. The rare question hidden in this book grows nearer. It favors hands that first learn to trade with generosity. Chapter 8. The Assumption Probe. Mr. Ashby, conversations often run on invisible rails, assumptions we never name. Clara, you mean beliefs like this is how we do things, or this always fails? Mr. Ashby, exactly. Those rails steer choices long before reasons appear. Our job is to pause the train and ask, what belief are we treating as true here? Clara, that feels blunt. Will people react? Mr. Ashby, it can startle if offered as accusation, but framed as wonder, it becomes a lantern. Try. What are we assuming is true right now? The language invites curiosity, not judgment. Dialogue demonstration. Mr. Ashby, the team refuses to try the new process. Tell me, what are we assuming is true right now? Clara, that the new process will double workloads and create chaos. Mr. Ashby, and do we have evidence for that, or is it a memory of a past rollout? Clara, mostly memory. The last change lacked training. Mr. Ashby, then our assumption is not about the process itself, but about implementation. If we test implementation supports, the decision might change. A short vignette. A hospital committee resisted a proposed scheduling tool. The chair asked the group, what are we assuming is true here? Nurses answered that new tech always increases our time burden. The assumption was traced to one previous rollout, where IT had failed to provide training and adequate devices. With that explicit, the committee redirected the conversation from rejecting technology to specifying training, device allocation, and a phased rollout. The assumption changed the question from whether to adopt to how to adopt responsibly. Mechanism, why this question works. It surfaces hidden drivers. What felt like resistance often rests on an unstated belief. It shifts the frame from opponent to investigator. Naming assumptions invites collaborative testing. It converts abstract fear into testable hypotheses. Once an assumption is named, you can design an experiment to confirm or refute it. It reduces argument by creating shared inquiry. People defend positions less when they're invited to examine the ground they stand on, common missteps, and how they spoil the trap. Using the question as a charge. What are you assuming? Sounds confrontational. Use inclusive language. What are we assuming? Accepting assumptions as facts. Don't stop at naming. Plan how to check them. Ignoring minority assumptions. Small, privately held beliefs can be decisive. Invite quieter voices. Overloading the room. Don't ask for every assumption at once. Pick the most consequential and test it. Correct application. The 3-moment ritual. Invite. Ask, what are we assuming is true right now? Make it collective. Name and prioritize. List the named assumptions and pick the one with the biggest impact. Design a quick test. Agree on a small experiment or evidence-gathering step to confirm or disprove that assumption. A practice to try tomorrow. At your next planning meeting or negotiation, pause after a refusal or stuck point and ask the probe question aloud. Write down the assumptions that appear. Choose a single assumption that, if false, would change the outcome. Propose a 1-week test or a 1-question survey that will reveal whether that assumption holds. Ethics and humility. Calling out assumptions can unsettle people who feel exposed or mistaken. Always pair the probe with humility. Admit your own assumptions first. Use this tool to clarify, not to score rhetorical points. Do not weaponize discovered assumptions to embarrass. Instead, convert them into shared learning. Hook, why continue? You have learned to name the quiet rules beneath decisions. Next, we will lure a question that invites future-facing thinking, a frame that helps people move from present constraint to preferred possibility. It's a gentle bridge from we can to here's how we might, and it will help the ledger's secret question feel less like a reveal and more like a culmination. Chapter 9. The Future Bridge. Mr. Ashby, many conversations are stuck because people live in the present's fences. The future, oddly, is often more generous. Clara, generous how? Mr. Ashby, possibility widens when you step forward in time. Asking someone to imagine success removes the immediate pressures that tighten denial or fear. Try this. Imagine we fast forward to a moment when this worked. What happened between now and then? Clara, that asked them to narrate success rather than defend failure. Mr. Ashby, exactly. It invites specifics, steps, people, conditions, without asking for a promise today. That imagined path often contains the practical clues you need. Dialogue, demonstration. Mr. Ashby, we keep circling the same objections. Suppose, for a moment, we fast forward to a table where the project succeeded. What happened between now and then? Clara, we hired a part-time coordinator and ran a short pilot with 2 clients. We measured outcomes and publicly shared results. Mr. Ashby, who proposed a coordinator? Clara, Jonas. He volunteered after seeing a clear scope. Mr. Ashby, there it is, a sequence you can test. The imagined future has handed you a practical experiment, a short vignette. At a city planning meeting, residents opposed a new traffic plan because they feared lost parking and chaos. The facilitator asked, fast forward to a year from now and everything has gone well. What did we do differently? Residents described clear signage, a phased rollout, free trial parking weekends, and a responsive hotline. Those elements became the pilot's menu. The future story turned abstract fear into a list of mitigations that could be trialed and priced. Mechanism, why this question works. It frees people from present defensiveness. Imagining success lowers stakes. People speak creatively rather than protectively. It surfaces concrete steps. Success narratives often contain the missing actions, agents, and supports you need. It reveals who matters. People name allies, blockers, and helpers in their story. Useful for planning and coalition building. It produces testable experiments. From a future narrative, you can usually extract 1 or 2 small trials that move toward that outcome. Common missteps and how they spoil the trap. Letting it become fantasy. If the future story lacks anchors and then a miracle occurred, push for at least 1 real person and 1 real action, using it to dismiss present concerns. Dream away is not the point. Validate present fears before inviting the future. Skipping translation. Don't leave the future a story. Translate it into immediate, achievable steps. Monopolizing the narrative. If you sketch the future for others, you rob them of agency. Ask, then listen. Correct application. The 4-step ritual. Calm the present worry. Acknowledge constraints briefly, so people know they were heard. Ask, imagine we fast forward when this worked. What happened between now and then? Allow space. Extract specifics. Name 1 person, 1 action, and 1 measurable sign that success has arrived. Turn story into experiment. Choose 1 small action from the story to try within the week, a practice to try tomorrow. In your next stuck conversation, pause and say the question verbatim. When someone offers a future scene, write down the first 3 concrete elements they name: person, action, metric. Ask which of those could be tested quickly. Propose a single pilot drawn from the story and agree on how you'll observe whether it moves you closer to that imagined success. Ethics and stewardship. The future is persuasive. Use it to expand possibility, not to seduce people into risks they can't bear. When the success story requires resources or sacrifices from others, surface those costs clearly. If the imagined future depends on someone else's labor, ask how they will be supported or compensated. The aim is collaborative possibility, not wishful outsourcing. Hook, why continue? You have learned to move from present refusal to future possibility. In the next chapter, you will meet a question that tests sincerity, not to trap, but to translate good intentions into clear signals someone can trust. The ledger's rare secret grows nearer. Practice these bridges and you will be ready to use it wisely. Chapter 10. The Sincerity Signal. Mr. Ashby, words can be generous, actions are quieter. Many good intentions fade because we mistake speech for solidity. Clara, so we need a way to tell the difference without sounding distrustful. Mr. Ashby, exactly. There's a question that asks for a concrete signal of sincerity. Not to accuse, but to translate intention into a visible step. Try this. What would I see or hear from you in the next week that will convince me you really mean this? Clara, that asks them to show, not just tell. Mr. Ashby, and that matters. When someone names a specific verifiable signal, they convert vague goodwill into a public, testable marker. It makes trust easier to give and easier to verify. Dialogue demonstration. Mr. Ashby, you've said you'll prioritize a review. I believe you, but I also need to plan. What would I see or hear from you in the next week that would convince me you really mean this? Clara, I could put a 30-minute block on Wednesday for the review and send a brief agenda by Tuesday evening. Mr. Ashby, that's perfect. A calendar block and an agenda. Concrete signals I can rely on. I'll treat that as our working commitment. A short vignette. After a tense donor meeting, an organizer left feeling hopeful but unsure whether promised funds would materialize. Instead of accepting the pledge as mere words, she asked, "What would I see or hear from you in the next week that will convince me you really mean this?" The donor offered a short email confirming the pledge amount and a date for transfer, copied to the finance officer. The organizer received the email 2 days later. The named signal removed ambiguity and allowed planning to proceed. Mechanism. Why this question works. It demands specificity. Vague promises collapse. Named signals are observable and time-bound. It shifts from intention to accountability. By naming a signal, the speaker undertakes a visible act that others can acknowledge. It preserves dignity. You're not forcing proof. You're inviting a helpful sign that eases mutual risk. It creates a simple test. The presence or absence of the signal gives useful, non-judgmental information that guides next steps, common missteps, and how they spoil the trap. Accepting theatrical signals. I'll text you later. Is weak unless you define time and content. Ask for something substantive. Requesting impossible proof. Don't demand grand gestures. Ask for small, verifiable signals that fit the person's capacity. Equating signal with full trust. A signal reduces uncertainty but rarely eliminates it. Use it as a basis for the next small step, not the final settlement, making it a test of shame. If you use the absence of a signal to humiliate, you break future trust. Treat misses as data, not indictment. Correct application. The 4-step ritual. Frame the need. Explain why a signal helps planning or reduces risk. Ask, what would I see or hear from you in the next week that would convince me you really mean this? Allow silence. Confirm specifics. Repeat back the signal and its timing. So a 30-minute calendar block on Wednesday and an agenda by Tuesday, correct? Use the signal kindly. If the signal arrives, acknowledge it. If it doesn't, ask what happened and what would be reasonable next steps. A practice to try tomorrow. In any conversation where someone promises change, request a sincerity signal using the exact phrasing above. If they give a concrete signal, note it publicly, calendar, email copy, message. If the signal fails to appear, approach with curiosity. I noticed the agenda didn't arrive. Is there anything that got in the way? Use the absence to learn and to redesign a more realistic signal. Ethics and humane use. The sincerity signal is a tool for clarity, not coercion. Don't weaponize it against those with less time, power, or resources. When someone's capacity is limited, collaborate on an alternative signal that both respects constraints and reduces your uncertainty. If the signal reveals deeper inability, health, overwhelm, structural barriers, shift from accountability to support. Hook, why continue? You now possess a clean way to translate intention into observable signs of trustworthiness. In the next chapter, you will learn how to weave these question traps together into a single closing architecture, a concluding question that gathers momentum, reduces risk, and often turns a polite, maybe into a durable, compassionate agreement. The ledger's rare question waits. You are close enough now to see how the parts fit. Conclusion. The rare question revealed. Mr. Ashby, we began with a ledger and a lantern. We learned to part curtains, quiet guards, invite small steps, name reasons, and design experiments. Now the ledger asks for one final careful instrument, the one that pulls the threads together. Clara, I've been waiting for it. Will it be simple or elaborate? Mr. Ashby, both. Simple in form, elaborate in effect. It asks for clarity, commitment, and the other sense of agency all at once. Here it is. If we could agree on one practical next step that would make this worthwhile for you, what would it be, and how will we know it worked? Clara, that wraps everything up. It asks for a small step and a signal of success. Mr. Ashby, precisely. It synthesizes the ledger's lessons. Curiosity, modest asks, ownership trade-offs, assumption testing, future imagining, and sincerity signals, all in one clean frame. A short vignette. Two partners stalled over a marketing plan. They had argued about vision, budget, timing, and fairness for weeks. At last, one said the rare question. If we could agree on one practical next step that would make this worthwhile for you, what would it be, and how will we know it worked? The partner proposed a single 2-week social campaign targeted at one customer segment with a clear metric, a 10% increase in qualified leads. They scheduled a single review meeting 2 weeks after launch to inspect the data and decide whether to scale. The debate dissolved into a focus experiment. Mechanism, why the rare question works. Convergence, it collapses long discussions into one agreed experiment rather than 50 hypothetical fixes. Dual demand, it asks both for action, the step, and for criteria, how we'll know. Reducing ambiguity. Agency, it invites the other to name what would make the effort worthwhile to them, preserving dignity and alignment. Testability, by demanding a success signal, it converts promises into evidence and opens a path for iterative learning. Common missteps and how they spoil the trap, letting it become a checkbox. If you ask the question rhetorically and don't follow through, you waste trust. Record the step and the metric. Accepting wishful metrics. Everyone will feel better is not a measure. Push for at least one observable sign. Ignoring capacity. If the step requires resources the other lacks, negotiate supports rather than pressing for unreasonable promises. Using it to corner. Don't let the question become a blunt instrument to force a concession. Use it to design a fair trial. The ritual, a compact closing architecture. Ask the question aloud. If we could agree on one practical next step that would make this worthwhile for you, what would it be and how will we know it worked? Hold silence until a concrete step is named. Resist the urge to refine immediately. Pin the step down. Confirm who, when, and how much time/resources. Confirm the success signal. Repeat the metric or observable sign. And the date for review. Record and share. Put on a calendar or send a short confirming note to make the commitment public. Review kindly. When the review arrives, treat results as data, not judgment. Decide next steps together. A final practice to try tomorrow. Pick one stalled conversation, personal, professional, or casual. Use the exact phrasing of the rare question. When the other person names a step in a signal, create the smallest, clearest record, a calendar entry, or a one-line email. After the agreed period, meet for 5 minutes to inspect the signal and decide the next step. Notice how the combination of a practical move and a success measure changes the tenor of the exchange. Ethics and stewardship. The ledger's final insistence. The rare question is powerful because it demands both movement and evidence. Use it to enlarge possibility, not to squeeze concession. When people name steps that involve risk or labor, honor that risk with support, time, recognition, or resources. If the signal reveals failure, respond with curiosity and help design a humane next experiment. Influence without care is coercion. The ledger always returns us to compassion. Parting words. You came to this book seeking tools that feel antique and rare. Instruments that shape conversations without clattering like blunt force. You now carry a small kit. The gentle no, the mirror, the small step, the because uncover, the quiet confession, the ownership request, the trade-off ledger, the assumption probe, the future bridge, the sincerity signal, and finally, the rare question that ties them together. Conversation, when handled well, is not a battlefield but a workshop. Questions are not traps to ensnare, but keys to reveal rooms we might build together. Keep your ledger close. Practice slowly, respect dignity, and let each small agreement be a seed. The rare question is not a trick to master once. It is a discipline to practice always. Clara, I see now why you kept a ledger on the high shelf. The tools demand responsibility. Mr. Ashby, they do. Use them to create more freedom than they take. Ask with curiosity, bind with kindness, and when success arrives, let it be shared. Turn the page, then close the book slowly. Put what you learned into a small note. Practice one question this week, and return when you need to sharpen the ledger's edge. Questions are living things. Tend them well,